On March 3rd, 2020, I had an encounter with at least 2 Sasquatch while investigating an area along the California Sierra Nevada mountains. During that encounter, I was able to obtain some amazing audio recordings. I followed a Sasquatch through the woods using my parabolic microphone, and I actually caught a Sasquatch on camera as it hid in the brush roughly 20 feet from my location. And today is March 3rd, 2021, and I am heading back up into that location to see if I can have another encounter with the Sasquatch. Okay, I'm heading into the woods where I heard the sounds. I could hear them. I could hear them on the parabolic. I could hear them walking. It was definitely bipedal walking. I could hear they were making like little whooping sounds and grunting sounds. And I absolutely believe the Sasquatch are here. And I'm absolutely terrified. Well, unfortunately, we have hit the end of the road again. I am trying to get up to my incident site from last March 3rd, 2020. I had that encounter with the 2 Sasquatch up in this area, but unfortunately we are still several miles away from that location, and you can see the road conditions behind me are absolutely impassable. So unfortunately we're going to have to abort our attempts, and it's really disappointing because I didn't think there was so much snow in this area. We have not had a lot of snowfall this season, so I really didn't anticipate the roads to be so heavily covered with snow. So it was a surprise to me arriving here and discovering this. But as I mentioned before, though I do believe the Sasquatch will be hanging out up in that area near where I found that nest site, I also believe the Sasquatch tend to stay just below the snow line. So this may definitely be presenting us with an opportunity to start investigating some other areas of interest. And I'm also interested in getting back over to that location that I've been investigating the past few episodes, where I had a number of unusual happenings, and there were some things that were going on over there that definitely raised some interest. So I am anxious to get back over in that area to continue our investigation of that area, because I do see why it would be strategic for the Sasquatch to be moving down into that particular vicinity. So I think it would be a really good idea if we were to get over there and to continue our investigation of that area. And first I'm going to be checking out this area because we are just below the snow line. It is the perfect location to be looking for the Sasquatch, and I'm going to be moving through this area, especially along the roadways, searching for any sort of physical evidence that the Sasquatch are in the area. I have mentioned this numerous times on previous episodes that I think it's very advantageous for researchers to spend a little time investigating the roadways in these forested environments, because I think it is definitely a good place to be searching for that physical evidence that the Sasquatch is moving through an area, especially here in the California Sierra Nevada mountains, where unfortunately the forest has had an incredible amount of devastation caused by the infamous bark beetle that has been responsible for killing tens of millions of trees along the California Sierra Nevada mountains all the way up to Oregon. So the forest is an absolute debris field of fallen trees, and I think it makes it incredibly difficult to move through that environment. And I know a lot of you out there would argue that these fallen trees absolutely do not pose a challenge for the Sasquatch, and I would agree that the Sasquatch does have formidable strength and power. However, I have spent an incredible amount of time in these forested environments, and I can absolutely attest to the fact that these fallen trees are creating some challenges when moving through that environment. So I think it is very advantageous for researchers, as I mentioned, to spend a little time along the roadways here searching for that physical evidence, especially on the embankments where you can find these game trails that lead down to the roads. That would be the perfect location to be looking for that physical evidence, and I have had a lot of success in the past. And again, I think that these roadways do offer the Sasquatch that perfect opportunity to travel great distances in a short amount of time. Generally, the Sasquatch are moving about between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., and there's absolutely not a lot of traffic on the roads, these desolate forest roads during that time frame. So it definitely provides a Sasquatch an opportunity to move great distances quickly, and I think researchers really should put in the time to investigate these roadsides. Another thing that I believe adds credibility to the theory that the Sasquatch are using our forest roads when navigating through an environment are the multitude of eyewitness reports of roadside crossings in the dead of night along these desolate mountain roads. I spent a considerable amount of time investigating the area. However, I was anxious to get over to the other area of interest I have been investigating recently. So I hopped into my vehicle and headed that way. And as I was hiking into this new area of interest, I discovered some very interesting impressions in the snow. Okay, so I'm hiking into this area and I have encountered some interesting impressions. I'm going to swing the camera around so you can see what I am talking about. So I'm talking about this trackway here. At first I didn't really think much of it, but with closer inspection there are some interesting features of these impressions. So I was walking through here so you could see my shoe print there, but I'm talking about this impression and this one here and this one here, and you can almost see what could be toe details there. And we have another one here, and they just continue all the way up this embankment. So I am definitely going to be taking a closer look at these. If they are Sasquatch tracks, clearly they're not new, but it was just this one here with that interesting, it almost looks like toes here. And again, there's my boot print next to it. And what is intriguing is the spacing between them isn't very intriguing in the sense that there'd be a much longer stride, but it is interesting that the impressions are pretty much in a solid line, and that's generally a lot of times how the Sasquatch will move. With its unusual gait, a lot of times you will find their tracks in a complete straight line because of the way their feet swing around and land in front of the previous impression. So this is interesting, and I'm going to take a look at these impressions here. Okay, so those impressions are pretty interesting. They are all very consistent in size and shape, and they're measuring just a little over 15 inches. One thing is clear, these are not fresh tracks. There's not a lot of detail, and there is a lot of melting of snow around them. But what I really thought was intriguing was the straight line that these tracks were on. And my first occasion investigating this area, I did find some interesting impressions in the snow that got me to return to this location and to continue my investigation of the area. So I do see, using Google Earth and just having investigated this area for a while now, I do see the strategic advantage the Sasquatch would have in moving through this area. As I mentioned, I've been focusing my efforts primarily on another ridge further up where I had my encounter, but a local tipped me off to this area, and she mentioned that her and her husband had an encounter up in this location. So that's what got me up here in the first place. And I heard that possible whoop, discovered those interesting impressions, and I've had some very unusual happenings up in this area, which is why I'm up here again. But I don't know if you could see behind me, the fallen trees behind me. I don't know if you heard in the news a little while back, we had this incredible windstorm that hit California called the Mono winds. And in my area, literally hundreds of trees came crashing down on the roads. And in my neighborhood, a number of homes were partially destroyed as trees came down and landed on their homes. And it happened in the middle of the night, so there was one neighbor that was actually woken up as a tree came crashing through his bedroom ceiling and almost squished him in his bed. So it was a very terrifying situation. The power in my neighborhood was out for over a week because of all the power lines that were taken down as a result of the falling trees. So it was really a situation that took a long time to kind of clean up and get the roads cleared and get the power back on. But you can see that the trees here are definitely creating some challenges now as I'm hiking into this area that I've been investigating. I've been hiking through these woods now for a few weeks, and I have to say that this particular trip, it's becoming much more difficult moving through the forest environment because of all these downed trees. Okay, this is really just incredible, all the debris that is in this forest now. And again, I've been moving around through these forests a lot over the past few weeks, and the devastation caused by those mono winds is just absolutely extraordinary. With sustained winds of over 70 miles per hour, the Mono windstorm absolutely created an incredible amount of devastation to the forest here. And with the dead trees that were the result of that pine beetle, there is just an extraordinary amount of debris on the forest floor, and it makes it incredibly difficult to navigate through this environment. I don't know if you can see in the environment behind me, this was that location I was in on the last few episodes, and you can just see that the environment has changed dramatically with all these downed trees. So I was planning on spending a little bit of time here. Previously, on that last episode, I did do some night maneuvers in the area, and I was interested in spending some time in this environment. However, with all this debris on the forest floor, I don't think it is going to be easy to be moving around in the environment at nighttime. So I'm going to be staying in this location a little bit longer because I am really interested in continuing my investigation of this area, because I do think there is something unusual happening here. As you recall, on that first episode when I was investigating this area, I had that emotional resonance that was really creating a lot of emotional anxiety for me. And there's nothing particularly foreboding about this environment. However, there was something that was creating this dis-ease within me emotionally. And then I heard that unusual sound, which I concluded was a woodpecker that was hitting a hollowed out log or tree. But that being said, I have moved around a lot in this forest, but it's just this particular location that seems to create emotional anxiety for me. There is definitely something unusual going on here. So that is why I keep coming back to this location to continue my investigation. And you recall on that previous episode, when I was wearing the red shirt, I was seeing movement out of the corner of my eye. And when I looked in that direction, I saw this unusual area that was unfocused, just this shimmering of unfocused like area, and it would kind of move a little bit and then it would fade away. And there are researchers that do believe that the Sasquatch has the ability to cloak itself, and it would create that kind of unusual shimmering as it moves through the woods. And it has been reported a number of times that people were seeing such phenomenon while the Sasquatch were in the area, and the Native Americans used to say, or they probably still say, that the Sasquatch can dematerialize. So all that being said, again, I don't know what the Sasquatch are or what they're capable of. However, I do think there's something unusual happening here, and I am going to continue my investigation of this area for a bit longer, and then I'm going to start heading out because it is already getting quite dark. The sun has already gone down, and it's going to take me quite a trek to get back to my vehicle. So it has been incredibly slow going and moving through the forest. It is now getting really dark, and I can't see so well moving through it, so it's taking me a lot longer to get back to my vehicle. And I can also hear what sounds like a pack of coyotes moving about in the forest here. I can hear their yips and their little barking. So it does sound like there's some coyotes in the area. And as I mentioned earlier, I was getting that creeped out vibe again in that particular location. And tonight it hasn't really subsided since I've moved out of that environment. So one, that does encourage me to get back to my vehicle a little quicker, but it also encourages me to continue my investigation of this area, because whenever you have that emotional resonance, some sort of unpleasantness, there's definitely something going on there. There's definitely something that I find intriguing about that particular location. And now we found interesting impressions on 2 occasions in this general vicinity. Today I was really impressed with the trackway that we found, because the tracks were in a straight line, and on that one impression it does looked like there may have been some evidence of toes. So that trackway was very intriguing. So I am definitely interested in keeping this area under investigation. There is something unusual happening here, and I will definitely be coming back out into these woods in the future. Okay, not always a pleasant thing to be moving around in the dark forest alone at night. And I have to admit, this is definitely one of those occasions. I have heard movement in close proximity to me here in the forest. I can't see anything, and I will probably be breaking out the FLIR here just to kind of see if I can catch anything on camera. But I have to admit, it is a little concerning in the sense that whatever it was, it sounded big. I could hear it moving through the forest in close proximity to me. So I must admit, I am getting a little creeped out at the moment, and I am still quite a distance from my vehicle. So I think at this point, I am going to stop and hunker down here. I actually do have the flashlight on, so I can see a little more of my environment. It's not something I usually do, turn on the flashlight, but I'm not quite sure what is going on at the moment. So I am going to stop here for a moment, and I'm going to get the FLIR out and to see if I could see anything in the forest around me. Okay, I can't see anything on the FLIR, and I haven't heard any more movement, but I am going to kind of get a move on here and get back to my vehicle. The temperature has dropped dramatically, and there seems to be almost a fog that's moving into the area. It definitely seems there is a haze, like a fogginess about the area. So I am definitely really kind of anxious to get back to my vehicle at this point, and I still have quite a trek to take to get there. So I am going to get a move on here. Okay, well, that was an interesting evening to say the least. but I have to admit I am happy to be back at my vehicle. Definitely something unusual is going on in this area, and I definitely think we should be keeping this area under our radar, because I do see why the Sasquatch would find this area particularly enticing. And there has been now a number of things that have occurred here that definitely lead me to believe that something is happening here. And I am definitely interested in continuing to monitor this area. So I am definitely going to do so. But tonight I am going to wrap things up and get into my car and get that heater turned on, because it is incredibly cold. I told you about that unusual fog that was rolling in, and it is something interesting in the sense that it just started to get foggy in the environment here. And it reminds me of a story I heard from a Native American woman that is from the area, who was telling me in very close proximity to this particular location, she was hiking, and this fog, this very unusual fog, just kind of materialized and ascended around her. And she said it was a very unusual situation. She had never experienced something like that before. It was a very unusual phenomenon. And she said that there was some sort of supernatural feel about it. So that is interesting that she had told me this story, and the location that she had that encounter is less than 5 miles from here, probably more like 3 miles as the crow flies. So it is interesting that I experienced that similar phenomenon here, although I really can't see it so much. I mean, there is just a haziness in this environment, and what she was describing was very elaborate. I mean, there was a definite change in the environment that she was in. So definitely an interesting thing going on here. I don't know if one would say that these woods are haunted, but there is something very unusual happening, and I am going to continue my investigation of this area. And until next time, I'm Darrin Smith, and I'll see you here at squatchspot.com.